got a question for you. I've been watching there's a couple of theories that you have on your site that are pretty interesting. One is the coronal holes cause or linked to earthquake upticks.
Yeah.
And the other one that actually was, even today, was exemplified was that the low pressure cyclone or whatever also seems to be linked to earthquake activity. Right. What is it about the coronal hole? I mean, I don't even understand what coronal holes are much, but what do you think is about that might be linked to earthquake upticks? And same with low pressure. Is it just because the air is a low pressure area and the ground is rebounding there or something? Or why would it happen?
Well, coronal holes, there's a couple of things that we could be talking about. And where we are right now is we can see the patterns a lot better than we understand the exact mechanics and why it works that way. With the coronal holes, these interplanetary magnetic fields don't loop back down to the sun that we so often see. They stream out into space. In fact, every planet has a magnetic tether back to the sun. Magnetic tethers only connect at coronal holes. And so a lot of times you can look at how powerful a coronal hole is and know a lot about the amount of energy exchange between Earth and Sun, at least along that magnetic tether. Coronal holes also pump out alpha waves, which have been noticed to be produced when earthquakes are occurring as well. Additionally, they put out really fast solar wind streams. And so you have basically the ambient solar wind coming off the sun going through the solar system. All of a sudden a coronal hole throws out a really fast burst of solar wind. That's a magnetic field moving through space. That's going to affect everything else around it. And so we have a number of avenues for potential connections, and maybe it's a combination of them all. At this point, the best we can say is that the coronal holes facing Earth tends to be proliferative of the earthquakes. In terms of why the low pressure systems have something to do with earthquakes, there's two aspects. There's two avenues of thought here. One is that there's something about the lower pressure that, relieves pressure on the ground and allows it to move. If it's over the ocean, it's going to change the sea level, which has a clear effect on the amount of pressure down below. But also, this is one of the things I wrote the paper on with Billy, with Dr. Uyen and the stats department from Ohio State. We're noticing a lot of coupling mechanisms between the ground, the atmosphere, and the ionosphere. And just like you see sunspots, one positive, one negative, and it's going to have magnetic fields connecting it, we should see that on Earth as well, where a low pressure system connects to a high pressure system, or maybe it's another low pressure system, or maybe it's a volcano or an earthquake zone. Because time after time we see the strengthening, the intensification, the formation of these storms, and so nearby we see volcanic or seismic activity. Much like you can look at the sunspots and then look at the yellow version of the sun I show, 171 angstroms, and see, oh, wait a minute, there's magnetic fields connecting these sunspots. That's probably what you're seeing on Earth as well, if just without seeing the actual magnetic fields. Happens in the Philippines all the time. If you're just joining the channel, wait until the East Pacific hurricane season ramps up. You will see tropical storm formed, earthquake right above it in Mexico or in Central America. It happens to a T. Hurricane Irene back in 2011 that came on shore on the East Coast ran almost right over the area where they had that Washington, D.C. earthquake just a few days before that. This summer, we had all these hurricanes or tropical storms form in the Atlantic, but none of them came over to the United States. They all shot straight north into the northern Atlantic Ocean, right? Well, they all went and sat right over top of Iceland. They would shoot up there and then they would just stop. Then they dissipate. They would shoot up there and stop. And then as soon as, right in the middle of all that going on, the Iceland volcano starts erupting. We see this in Japan all the time. We see it in Japan a lot more with volcanoes than we do with earthquakes. But it is just so amazing how well that works. We've even seen it in the Indian Ocean a few times on the Carlsberg Bridge. The idea is that just like you can see the magnetic fields connecting the stormy, turbulent areas on the sun, you should be able to see those on Earth as well, and that's what I'd love to build a satellite for.
A long time ago, I ran across a theory